Hello, and welcome to the dungeon. I'm your host, Rob. In today's video, I want to take a look at building Captain America because I had several requests for this after the Thor and Iron Man builds, and the Darkness, which we did quite some time ago. Much like those builds, though, I'm more interested in playing a character who's inspired by Captain America, not trying to actually recreate Steve Rogers' Captain America. And I think that's especially important for this build because the truth is that Iron Man, Thor, and the Darkness all translated to D&D, at least in my opinion, a lot better than Captain America. Because there are some specific rules that really kind of hinder the Captain America that we see in the comics and the movies from actually functioning well. So I kind of want to address those early on to sort of explain why I went the route I did. Because technically speaking, donning or doffing a shield is an action. So making your shield this awesome throwing weapon that we see Captain America using all the time doesn't work very well in D&D actually, because if you want to re-equip your shield again, that took your action. I'd rather just be attacking with that action, especially if I'm a fighter, for example, and I have multiple attacks. I'm going to use one action to throw my shield and then action surge to re-equip it again? It just doesn't seem very fitting, for example. We could also multi-class and add things like Monk or even Barbarian or some of these other classes. Paladin, of course, is a great option as well to kind of try to duplicate some of that. But we do run into a lot of issues in general. I also wanted to try to find a way to make this shield return. And I think there are some good options for that. Maybe grabbing a couple levels of Artificer, or instead of going Battle Master Fighter, which would be my main suggestion, we could go with Eldritch Knight and use Weapon Bond. But technically speaking, again, your shield isn't a weapon, it's armor. And Weapon Bond and Returning Weapon wouldn't really be eligible with the shield. So, at the end of the day, I thought, yes, we could take Tavern Brawler and we could punch stuff. And we can smash them with our shield as an improvised weapon, which, by the way, is still not a bad choice. We might take Tavern Brawler anyway, because it's still a point of strength or constitution, and then we can punch stuff and smash them with our shield, which is kind of fun. But we also see Captain America in the movies using, most iconically, of course, Thor's hammer, but we do see him, especially in the original movie, the first Avenger, we see him using guns and stuff when he's in the military. And so I do want to address the idea that he only punches stuff, because that is not really true if you look at his, overall appearances, right? Left with the choice of punching Thanos in the face or hitting him with Mjolnir, he goes for Mjolnir, which any logical person would do. So I don't think it's that he won't use weapons. It's just that he, doesn't only use weapons. He also uses other things. So with that in mind, I wanted to make a character that focused more on Captain America's battlefield and inspirational type control, plus his shielding of the allies using things like Shield Master Feat, etc. And of course, obviously using a shield, because that's kind of Captain America's most iconic thing. But I wanted to build a character that was more inspired by the image and the feel of Captain America, not one who was necessarily trying to duplicate every single thing we see from him in the movies, because the truth is that while we could do it, it's just really, really suboptimal. And at the end of the day, I'm looking to have fun with this character, not play somebody who I'm just like, man, this guy, he's a cool idea and I want to do all this stuff and it just doesn't work right. That's a very frustrating experience. And I think that sometimes, at least to me personally, getting the mood and the atmosphere of what I'm trying to do right is often more important than a literal scene for scene recreation. You know what I mean? I'll use the movie V for Vendetta as an example. As somebody who was a huge fan of the V for Vendetta comic book, the graphic novel, and then saw the movie, I know people who didn't like the movie because they thought that it didn't recreate the comic very well. But I personally loved the movie. And in fact, in many ways, I thought the movie was even better because it took a lot of what happened in the comic and just modernized it and updated it and made it more relevant to today's society, I guess. Technologically speaking, those things, right? But the reason I loved it was because they kept the theme and the mood, and it had that same feel. Whereas, like, say, well, let's use The Watchmen as an example, since it's the same writer. The Watchmen movie is much closer to the Watchmen comics than the V for Vendetta movie was to the V for Vendetta comic. However, while I still enjoyed the Watchmen movie a lot, I thought the comic was like up here and then V for Vendetta was slightly lower. I think the V for Vendetta movie I liked more than the Watchmen movie, though, so it's kind of flipped, even though I enjoyed both in both cases, right? But the Watchmen was almost like too much of the actual comic and was afraid to, like, make it a movie almost, you know what I mean? They were trying to make a moving comic book, essentially. And V for Vendetta was like, no, we're going to make a movie that's heavily based on and inspired by the comic, but we also remember that it's a movie and it needs to satisfy those kind of criteria. And personally, I thought that V for Vendetta was phenomenal. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. It's not necessarily the literal recreation of Captain America from the comics or the movies, which, I mean, it's already hard to do because he's existed in comics forever. We've seen different incarnations of him and eras of him over the years, etc., right? I'm looking to make a character that's inspired by him and much like him, but not necessarily duplicating every single thing we see. So, that all out of the way. Obviously, for race, I'm going to go variant human. I normally go variant human anyway. Captain America's human. That's a pretty logical choice. But again, if we're just looking to be inspired by him, you can make whatever choice you want, I think. You know, so if you don't want to go variant human, that's fine. Pick whatever you like. But variant human will give us a starting feat, which is pretty nice. I also went soldier for background. I think that you could maybe look at some other options, but first and foremost, he was a soldier in World War II. And, you know, if I want to carry that theme and mood ahead, then having him be a military veteran who's fought in war before, that already makes for a fairly interesting character, even if I want to put it in a D&D setting, you know? And so I like taking that idea as well. Soldier would give us athletics and intimidation skills. Nothing wrong with either of those. For class, I went fighter. I do think that you can make an argument for things like paladin as well, especially if you're just looking to have that sort of feel and mood. Then the fact that he has spells compared to Captain America, who doesn't technically have superpowers, that's not really a big deal if we're just looking for the inspirational type of idea. But I also like the idea of just being a battle master. Or even, I'd considered Banneret from the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. Banneret is one that, it's not that it's a bad subclass. I did a review of the subclass earlier, and I think that none of the abilities are necessarily bad. It's just that there's usually better options. But I do think that Banneret at least deserves a mention here, even though I decided to go Battlemaster personally, because I just think Battlemaster is better, and it had a lot of the same feeling that I wanted anyways. But it's at least worth giving it a shout out. I mean, nobody even mentions the Banneret. They're basically the, like, forgotten subclass almost, you know. At least the Warlock ones, people can complain about how terrible it was. Banneret just kind of, it's just that perfect element of absolute blandness, you know. It's not terrible enough to hate. It's not good enough to choose. It's just perfectly bland. But I do think that at least warrants a mention here. So whatever. But as I already mentioned, I'm going to go Battlemaster because it's just better. And it does have a lot of the same feel, like I said. So for my maneuvers, I think there's a lot you can choose from. And especially as we level up, you're going to be picking some of the ones you don't pick early on. So I'm just going to list some of the ones that I would look at. Not just because I think they're good, but because I think they also feel Captain America-ish. You know, like Commander Strike is a good example, right? Using his presence and leadership on the battlefield to allow other allies to use their reaction to attack. This is especially good if you have a rogue in your party who's now eligible to sneak attack with that attack because he's attacking on your turn, not his own turn. So obviously that is just a great choice. But honestly, anybody capable of making like ranged, like a ranger, for example, using a bow or a hand crossbow or whatever he's using, right? Someone like that's a good option as well. Just anybody who's going to be able to likely make the attack, probably do some good damage if they took sharpshooter or something, for example. and isn't going to have to worry about like, oh, I can't reach the enemy, right? Like that, you kind of want them to be able to hit. Now, if you're already all in melee combat, then maybe letting the paladin attack could be perfectly fine, right? Nothing wrong with that either. But in general, I'm looking for somebody who's going to be able to have an impact with that reaction attack, because it's only one attack, you know? Someone like a fighter who does lots of damage by just attacking in bulk isn't necessarily going to be my prime choice. Somebody who's capable of doing a lot of damage in one strike, they're a good pick. By the way, the Paladin could smite, so there is that. He's not a bad pick either. Parry, always a good choice. Plus, you know, Captain America's a fairly defensive-minded fighter, so that makes sense. Rally, because, again, inspiring and helping your allies. Disarming Strike is not always my favorite, but it does combine well with the Shield Master feat, where you could, like, disarm a guy and then, you know, knock them back. Now they can't even pick their weapon up again. You know, there is some possibility there. I think the Distracting Strike is kind of a borderline choice. It's one I might take later if I get to high enough level. Riposte is an excellent pick, though. This is one I would really, really seriously look at. It's one of my favorites overall. So that gives us some, you know, good starting points of things to look at, right? As far as my level 1 starting feat, I still might take Tavern Brawler. I'm very tempted, because this could give us a +1 to our strength or constitution, whichever one we want. And, you know, now we can do D4 for our punches and for our improvised weapon attacks, which includes the shield. We can also do things like a bonus action grapple after we've attacked someone, which could be very, very effective. And it also plays into that idea of helping out our allies by, you know, restraining and grappling our foes and making things easier for them. It also just kind of fits Captain America's fighting style a lot, where it's not just strikes. He does a lot of, like, you know, grappling and throws and things along that line, right? So again, taking inspiration by it, but not necessarily being 100% bound to it. Shield Master is also a good choice, but I'm probably going to take Shield Master at level 4 would be my option between the two, just because Tavern Brawler gives me that +1 to my strength, for example. So I would probably start with my stats something like this. Assuming I'm using point buy, right? I'd put 15 into strength. I'd probably go with 13 dex and con. And then, because I'm variant human, I would give each of those a +1. So I'm going to have a 15 strength, 14 dex, 14 con. And then with Shield Master, with Tavern Brawler, I will actually have the 16 strength to start out, right? So that's going to be kind of my plan there. I'll have the 16, 14, 14 in effect. And then we're going to go with 10 intelligence. Captain America is not stupid, but he's also not like, you know, some super genius like Reed Richards, Iron Man, etc., right? I mean, the Marvel Universe is full of geniuses. Captain America is just kind of middle of the road, right? So 10's good. I went with only 9 wisdom because something had to get dumped. I mean, you could go with 8 wisdom, and then that's not a bad option either. But wisdom's probably going to be my dump stat. I went with 9 because I might take Resilient Wisdom later on, which would just round that up to a 10. And then you could go with the 13 Charisma. And then if you wanted to multi-class Paladin, you have the 13. Obviously, you could play with those a bit. Odd stats aren't really great. The main reason I went with Charisma over Wisdom is because, you know, again, the theme of Captain America, he is this man out of time. He doesn't really understand a lot of things in modern society. He doesn't get a lot of, like, pop cultural references, for example, you know. And so I think that the lower wisdom kind of fits there. And he is a very charismatic guy. Like, at the end of the day, I just felt he uses charisma more than he uses wisdom, you know. He's a very inspirational figure. So charisma kind of fit. And like I said, then that also leaves me open to a possible Paladin multi-class if I want to add Paladin in. Which I don't know if I do or not, but it's good to have the option. We could also consider something like Monk, in which case we're going to need to have a higher wisdom. I'm more inclined to go Paladin, to be honest, though. Paladin would also give us smites and a second fighting style. We're probably not going to have a lot of smites, mind you. But whatever. So those would be my options. Like I said, I'm going to take Battle Master at level 3. At level 4, I'm going to grab the Shield Master feat. at level 6, we're going to get another ability score increase or a feat. We can either start maxing our strength out at this point, or we could look to add things like tough. Tough is something that I would definitely associate with Captain America. He's just kind of like more durable than you would expect him to be. Someone like the Hulk, of course, you're expecting him to be durable. Thor is a freaking god. You're expecting him to be durable. But, you look at like the Avengers versus Thanos when everybody gets taken down. Who are the last 3 guys standing before Doctor Strange and everybody else shows up? It's Thor, Iron Man, and Captain America. Those are the 3 guys, So, he's definitely a very durable, resilient type of fighter. And I think that sort of fits with that defensive-minded fighting, right? As far as our initial fighting style, I'm probably going to take protection. I think defense is better and also fits the theme. So if you want to go that route, you can. But defense is also very passive, just a +1 bonus to my armor class. Nothing wrong with that. That's a great fighting style. But protection is a lot more active, and I feel like it gives more of that Captain America feeling where you're interposing yourself to give, bonuses to your allies by giving enemies disadvantage to hit them. Because it's a lot more active, I think that it kind of just feels a little better. Even though, personally, I think it's actually a little worse. So use your own discretion there. Go with whichever one you want. But if you do multi-class into something like Paladin, you could have both, right? So there's always that option too. As far as other skills, I think something like Persuasion is a good choice, obviously. We're not going to necessarily have the best charisma. So if we have like a bard or an actual, full-on paladin or a warlock or somebody else in the party who's, sorcerer, who's going to be using that charisma route and is going to be doing that, it's a lot less important. But I do think that it's not a bad idea. We could always take something like Inspirational Leader as a feat as well. One thing about Fighter is because we're going to have so many feats, we can start to fit in some feats that you'd be like, man, I'd like to have it, but I just don't have the room. It's like, well, I'm a fighter, so I actually probably have the room. And this would be an argument against multiclassing. However, I will say that on the subject of Battle Master, this is something I've mentioned before. Now, I'm not complaining about Battle Master. Battle Master is one of the best fighter subclasses in the entire game, especially at lower levels. They are very front-end loaded. You get your 3 different maneuvers. You've got your 4 superiority dice per short rest. They started at a D8, which is pretty significant. They're not starting at like a D4 or something, And Battle Masters just have a lot going for them at early levels. My kind of issue with the Battle Master is that as I keep leveling up, I'm not saying they don't get better. Obviously they do. Everybody gets better when they level up. But I'm now choosing from maneuvers that I could have chosen back at level 3, but I didn't want, right? So I'm choosing from the same pool of abilities. I'm now making like level 7, I get 2 more. I'm now making my 4th and 5th choices. Well, that's not necessarily terrible because there might be 5 maneuvers that I thought were really good. And like maybe I really had to work to like get it down to 3 picks at level 3. But then I'm getting more choices again at level 10. And now I'm choosing my 6th and 7th best. And then later I'm choosing my 8th and 9th favorites. So this is one reason why I might be inclined to multiclass out of Battle Master at maybe I go to 11 or 12, get my 3rd attack, and maybe even get another feat. And then if the campaign is going to keep going, maybe that's when I decide to go into Paladin or something like that. Because I've already gotten most of what I'm looking for from Fighter. I wanted the maneuvers. I wanted some extra feat choices. I already got, I got maneuvers at 3 and 7. I got an extra feat at level 6. I kind of got the most of the core that I was looking for, right? And now if I want to add something else, I think that's a lot more reasonable. Whereas in some subclasses, like a champion is a great example. A champion kind of scales like this. And the Battle Master scales like, kind of like this. It starts way up here and then barely increases where the champion starts down here and then kind of starts to get good at around 11, honestly. It starts getting better anyway. And then at 18 has one of their best abilities, which, is so late in the game that you almost never get to see it in play ever, which is really disappointing. And that's why champion's widely considered to be kind of on the weak side, Even though if you look at both at level 20, they're probably pretty well balanced. It's just the game's not really played at 20 very often, but it's played at level 5 quite a bit. Sorry, champions, that's just the way it is. But like I said, the Battle Master, you'll eventually scale to a D10 and eventually to a D12, but that's not a big improvement over the D8, right? It's an extra point or 2 points on average per round if you're using it to like boost your damage or whatever, right? So this is why I say the Battle Master is so good early on. And it's not that it becomes bad later. It's just that the improvements are pretty small over what was already a phenomenal subclass. And that's why I don't mind multiclassing out of it at some point. Now, maybe we're going to get to 20 and I'll be like, crap, I should have just gone fighter all the way and I would have had another feat and fourth attack around. But like I said, that rarely happens, right? Whereas adding in something else might be more fun or just make the character, more well-rounded or whatever, right? So I do think that there's some options there where I might just look to multi-class out after I've kind of gotten all the core bits that I was looking for, right? But I think that going to at least 8, and if I go to 8, I kind of feel like Indomitables at 9, getting more, stuff at 10, yeah, not so bad. I mean, I'm not getting a lot at 10, to be honest. I'm just getting a couple more maneuvers, which, like I said, are now my, pretty bottom tier maneuvers that I'm choosing from. I upgrade from a D8 to a D10. But at 11, getting third attack is huge, especially combined with Action Surge. So I might be tempted to hang on to that. Like if I've already made it to, 9 or 10, I might as well just get to 11 and get third attack. But of course, then you got the problem where you're like, well, if I'm already 11, and maybe I'll just go to 12 and get the extra feat. And if I'm 12, maybe I should just go to 14 and get another extra feat. So it's a never-ending cycle. But really, it just depends what you're looking to add on. But that would be the main core that I'm looking for. I'm looking to use my shield to protect my allies with the protection fighting style. I'm looking to use things like Shield Masher to bash guys with my shield and knock them prone, knock them back, those kind of things where I feel like I'm using my shield actively and to good effect to booster, and or bolster, I guess, probably would have been the proper word, my allies around me, right? And then I'm also looking to use my maneuvers to both improve my own combat abilities through things like parry and riposte, but also to buff my allies through things like, say, like rally, commanding strike, maybe even distracting strike, whatever else, right? And so that's going to be the basic core of the build. And then if we want to add in things, like I said, like if you want to go monk, you can. If you want to go barbarian even, that kind of makes sense in some ways. It definitely makes you tougher anyway, you can go that route. If you want to add in paladin, which I think is the most thematically appropriate, then you can go that route as well. And none of those are bad choices. Like I said, it's like an inspirational leader. That's a pretty fun choice, even if you only have 13 charisma, because most of the bonus is coming from your character level anyway. So, it's not bad. Overall, I think that it's just a fun, kind of cool character where you definitely get to play like kind of a supporty fighter, but you can still do some pretty good damage, especially if you're using weapons. I think that if you just want to use Tavern Brawler and smash stuff with your shield, that can be pretty fun at lower levels, but I don't think that it keeps up once your allies are starting to get things like, magical weapons that, do like frost damage or fire damage on hit or something like that. Or, they get some intelligent sword that can also cast spells. And, this is why you use Thor's hammer when you have the chance, Because at some point, Captain America's like, yeah, you know what? I really need to upgrade my fist to something that actually can hurt Thanos, So anyway, that's the basic idea of the build. I realized that this one is probably the least like representative of the movie or comic version of the characters of them all. But like I said, that is due in a lot of reasons because of just like technical limitations of the way the rules work for things like shield use, right? It's technically not a weapon and it's really not eligible for things like, returning imbuement or weapon bond, right? Now, maybe your DM will decide, yeah, you know what? I don't really care. If you want to use it as a weapon and you took the Tavern Brawler feat so it counts as an improvised weapon, well, then I'm going to count that as a weapon. That's cool. Nothing wrong with that, right? But even still, the fact that I might have 2 or 3 attacks around, and then if I throw my shield, I can only return it as a bonus action. That's not bad. I like that idea. It definitely fits, but it's probably not the most optimal way to play. Now, is it better than having to not attack at all because I don't have enough range to reach my target? Yeah, obviously, in that case, throw that shield and have it return to you. It's kind of iconic, and that happens all the time in D&D. It's not like it's something where, it's like, oh, who could have foreseen a situation where I don't have enough movement to get into melee combat? Wow, never seen that happen before. No, it happens every time almost, it seems. It happens constantly. Most of your fights are not in a broom closet. They'll be in some like giant hall or a dungeon with like long corridors, or outdoors where the enemy have like 3 turns of shooting arrows at you before your fighter even gets to the enemy. you know what I'm saying. So, it's not a bad idea at all. And like I said, it does iconically fit the theme of the character, but it's going to be more like, it's like having a javelin on my greatsword fighter. That's not my go-to option. It's there because I can't always get to somebody to hit them with my greatsword, and I don't want to just dash or take the dodge action. And, I want to actually be able to do something. So, then I have a javelin or something I can throw, right? It's kind of like that. You're like, yeah, I got my shield. Maybe I take a couple levels of Artificer so I can get the returning imbuement. That's okay. If my DM kind of allows it to count as a weapon, then why not, right? Maybe we just have an Artificer, and I use the persuasion skill that I picked up to talk him into using one of his imbuements on my shield so that it can return. And now I don't even have to take Artificer. Even better. But anyways, that's going to be the basic idea of the build. I want to use my shield to protect my allies. I want to use my superiority die to inspire them. Maneuvering attack is also another good one that I should have mentioned. I can't believe I forgot that. I didn't write it down. Anyway, that's another one where I can use my superiority die to allow my allies to maneuver around the battlefield, do things. Another feat choice would be mobile, which I think definitely fits the Captain America theme. Do you want to wear heavy armor? I don't know. That's up to you. I would definitely consider it at least. And to be fair, in the comics, the armor he wears definitely looks a lot more like scale mail-ish. He has like the scales all over the top of his shoulders and stuff. But the movie version is definitely more like leather armor. So again, use your own discretion. But if you just want to wear plate mail and dump your dexterity and be like, yeah, you know what, I want to use my shield a lot, but I don't want to be Steve Rogers. I just want to have a character that kind of fits that theme. Then I think that, you can go that route. There's nothing wrong with it. So like I said, protection, shield master, maybe tavern brawler. I don't mind that choice at all. That's going to be the core of the build. And then we're going to use our maneuvers to help our allies, as well as to bolster ourselves with things like parry and riposte and whatever, right? And that's basically the build. And then just have fun from there. It's definitely more of a supporty type of fighter. It's one where we're going to be doing some pretty good damage still, assuming we're using, decent weapons, of course, right? We're not going to be looking to be like the guy, though, in hand-to-hand combat. We're looking to be the team leader and the guy who, kind of, raises everybody else on the team, right? We're that guy who's passing and distributing the ball, not the guy who's scoring all the points. Although we're still going to score some points, too. We're going to be like Jokic or something, just as an example, for anybody who knows basketball, which I don't really. I just know a bit. But anyways, that's the video. Feel free to like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. Most importantly, leave me your comments in the comment section. I'd love to hear other people's ideas of how they would do Captain America. I do think that it is possible to be a lot more accurate to the comics and the movies. But like I said before, I just feel that it's kind of suboptimal given the way the rules are written, which is really unfortunate. Because I think characters like the Darkness and Iron Man and Thor all adapted very well, in my opinion. But anyways, I have suggestions that people have given me for more comic book adaptations. So we'll look at some of those as well. And, give us lots of room for future videos. We'll probably also have more stuff to complain about with Wizards of the Coast between now and the launch of 6th edition. Let's just call it that. Who knows what they're going to call it? 1D&D 5.5. Who? They just seem to want to call it 5th edition again. But as people who play it or fans of it, we kind of need ways to distinguish things. Like, come on. That's why sequels don't have the exact same name as the original movie. If Rocky 2 was just called Rocky, and you're like, you mean Rocky or like Rocky? And, it's just a confusing mess. Like, come on, Wizards, what are you doing? Anyways, that's everything. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.